Just before Tay-K was sentenced to 80 years in the pen, he broke down in court, and what he said has the internet in shock. In newly surfaced footage, the rapper is seen apologizing publicly for the first time, revealing chilling details about the day Mark Anthony Saldivar was killed outside that Chick-fil-A in 2017. But Tay-K wasn't the only one opening up. His ex-girlfriend also took the stand and spilled everything. From confessions to claims we've never heard before, the courtroom turned into a full-on tell-all. Let's break down exactly what went down. The shocking courtroom confession. Some wild footage from Tamor Tay-K McIntyre's murder trial that got everybody talking about whether the young rapper actually apologized in court. Let me put y'all on game about what really went down in that Bexar County courtroom and separate the facts from the cap. First things first, let's get the real talk on this case. Tamor McIntyre, the young blood who blew up with that 2017 banger, The Race, has been caught up in the system for a minute. After getting convicted in 2019 for a body from a 2016 home invasion in Mansfield, Texas, Lil Homie was facing a second murder trial in 2025 for allegedly taking out photographer Mark Anthony Saldivar. The incident popped off on April 23, 2017 at a Chick-fil-A parking lot in San Antonio. According to the DA, Tay-K and his squad lured Saldivar to the spot under the guise of a photo shoot, but they were really trying to run his pockets for his camera equipment, a stick-up that ultimately turned deadly. What makes this case extra crazy is that this all allegedly went down while Tay-K was already on the run after cutting off his ankle monitor while awaiting trial for the 2016 Mansfield body. During this time ducking the law, he dropped The Race, which was basically giving the play-by-play of his fugitive lifestyle. Ironically, those same bars would later get used against him in court. According to reliable sources, the Post said, "I want to apologize to all my fans and supporters for letting my management and label convince me that it wouldn't be a good decision to speak out against the way the media makes me look and the complete lies they spread." That social media statement, which a family member posted and later got attributed to Tay-K, was directed at his fans rather than the victims or the court. It was about media portrayal, not expressing remorse for the alleged crimes. Multiple news outlets and court records don't mention Tay-K offering any kind of apology during his trial. What did become the main attraction of the trial, though, was the bombshell testimony from Tay-K's ex-shorty, Joanna Marie Reyes. When she took the stand on April 7, 2025, she dropped some heat that would end up cooking Tay-K's defense. Initially facing her own capital murder charge, Reyes had taken a plea deal, getting 10 years probation for the lesser charge of tampering with evidence in exchange for snitching on Tay-K. Reyes's testimony started with her explaining how the whole thing with Saldivar got set up. According to her, she arranged a photo shoot with Saldivar at Tay-K's request, hitting him up through the gram. What was fronted as a legit business opportunity, she testified, was actually a setup to run his pockets. In one of the most damning parts of her testimony, Reyes described how things initially popped off.
And Tamor took out his gun and pointed it at Mark and asked for his bag. Mark refused to give him the bag, so they all started hitting him.
She continued, detailing how the violence escalated.
And Tamor was hitting him with the gun. And the whole time I didn't look back, but when I did, I saw his face.
Reyes testified that she tried to stop what was happening.
And I started telling them to let him go. And I just kept screaming, "Let him go." And Jalen opened the door and started pushing him out.
According to her, Saldivar got forced out of the whip, but kept fighting back.
And he was fighting to get back in the car. And then they didn't let him in the car, so he went around the car.
The situation got even more wild as Saldivar tried to stop them from bouncing.
And he jumped on the hood. And then the light turned green.
Okay. I'm gonna stop you right there, okay?
Okay.
So, when you all were at the light on McCullough, you said Tamor produced his gun, correct?
Yes.
And
when asked who Tay-K was aiming at with the burner, Reyes didn't hesitate.
Who did Tamor have the gun pointed at?
Mark.
And what was Tamor saying when he had the gun pointed at Mark?
To give him his bag.
And so, once the light turned green, what happened?
He pointed the gun at me and told me to start driving.
She then described pulling up to the Chick-fil-A parking lot, where everything came to a tragic end.
So I started driving. I didn't know where to go, so I turned into the first place that I saw, which was the Chick-fil-A.
Reyes detailed the chaos that went down in the parking lot.
Once I turned into the Chick-fil-A, he kept yelling at me to get him off the car. I didn't know how to, so I was just going back and forth really quickly.
Finally, she dropped the most incriminating part of her testimony, directly putting the body on Tay-K.
And then Mark kicked the windshield, and Tay-K opened the door and shot him.
Reyes's testimony gave the prosecution a direct eyewitness putting the burner in Tay-K's hands. She also made another wild claim. After the shooting, Jalen Bell allegedly dapped up Tay-K saying, "You caught your first body," though she noted Bell was heated that Saldivar only had $10 on him. Of course, the defense team, led by attorney John Hunter, went hard trying to discredit Reyes. They kept emphasizing her plea deal, suggesting she was just saying whatever to save her own skin from a capital murder charge. They painted her as a liar, whose testimony shouldn't be trusted given her own legal situation. A tense moment popped off during the trial when defense attorney John Hunter violated a pretrial order by mentioning allegations about child pornography against Saldivar. Judge Boyd wasn't having it and checked the defense immediately, told the jury to ignore what they heard, and denied a request for a mistrial. This slip-up potentially damaged the defense team's credibility with the jury. As the trial continued, the prosecution showed enhanced surveillance footage from the Chick-fil-A parking lot to back up Reyes's story. The original footage was garbage quality, recorded with a fisheye lens that distorted everything, but after getting enhanced by some tech experts in Nashville, it provided visual evidence supporting key parts of Reyes's account. Throughout everything, Tay-K maintained he wasn't guilty, with his defense team arguing that the prosecution's case was relying too heavy on Reyes's story and didn't have enough physical evidence directly linking Tay-K to the shooting. But the combination of Reyes's eyewitness testimony, supporting statements from other witnesses, and the surveillance footage created a pretty strong case for the prosecution. Hidden family secrets. The prosecution's whole case against Tamor Tay-K McIntyre was heavily banking on what his ex-shorty Joanna Reyes had to say, but there was mad other stuff going on in this complicated legal battle. Let's dig deeper into Reyes's background. Check out how the defense tried to clap back and uncover some low-key details that affected how the case went down. Joanna Marie Reyes's relationship with Tay-K put her right in the middle of what happened on April 23, 2017. Court record shows she wasn't just watching from the sidelines, but was actively involved in setting up the situation that led to the fatal encounter with Mark Anthony Saldivar. The prosecution established that Reyes had used her Instagram connection with Saldivar to arrange what was supposedly a legit photo shoot, knowing they were really planning to run his pockets. This involvement initially had Reyes facing her own capital murder charge, but she took a plea deal for the lesser charge of tampering with evidence, getting 10 years probation in exchange for snitching on Tay-K. The defense later used this plea agreement as the cornerstone of their strategy to make her look like a liar. While the clips of Reyes's testimony that blew up on social media caught the most dramatic moments, her full testimony revealed extra details that provided more context about the relationship dynamics between her and Tay-K. She described a pattern of manipulation and intimidation that eventually led to her participating in the events leading to Saldivar's death. These elements were particularly relevant in understanding why she might have been scared to step in more decisively during the confrontation. The defense team went hard trying to challenge Reyes's credibility, pointing to how her statements to police right after the incident didn't match up with her later testimony. They also emphasized her own legal troubles as a powerful motivator to potentially lie, suggesting she was willing to throw Tay-K under the bus to secure her own freedom. Defense attorney John Hunter presented a timeline questioning whether Reyes could have seen the shooting as clearly as she claimed, given her position as the driver and how chaotic the whole situation was. He also suggested alternative scenarios where Saldivar's death could have resulted from actions by other people present, including Jalen Bell, another homie who was allegedly in the whip. The prosecution, anticipating these challenges, had backed up Reyes's testimony with corroborating evidence. This included not just the enhanced surveillance footage, but also testimony from other witnesses who saw parts of the incident. Anna Delgado, a random bystander, testified to seeing a man on the hood of a black whip, matching Reyes's account of Saldivar jumping onto the vehicle. Additionally, the prosecution presented physical evidence recovered from the scene, including forensic analyses that lined up with the sequence of events Reyes described. While not conclusive on their own, these elements collectively strengthened the prosecution's narrative. An important aspect of the case that didn't get as much attention in media coverage was the testimony of a forensic expert who analyzed Tay-K's cell phone data. This evidence placed his phone at the location of the shooting when it happened, contradicting initial statements from the defense suggesting he might not have been there for the whole incident. Throughout the trial, Tay-K kept his cool, occasionally talking with his attorneys, but generally staying stone-faced during Reyes's testimony. This stoic demeanor became a topic of discussion among legal analysts, with some suggesting it could influence how the jury perceived him. As the prosecution's case against Tay-K continued to build, the defense's opportunity to present their alternative narrative approached. Their strategy would involve not just attacking the credibility of key witnesses like Reyes, but also introducing a broader context about Tay-K's background and the environments that shaped him. This brings us to perhaps the most slept on, yet emotionally powerful testimony of the trial, that of Kayla Beverly, Tay-K's sister. While the mainstream coverage focused primarily on the explosive allegations in Reyes's testimony, Beverly's account of their childhood provided critical insights into factors that may have contributed to Tay-K's life trajectory. Beverly's testimony painted a disturbing picture of a childhood marked by instability, neglect, and abuse. She described how she and Tay-K got taken from their mother's care and placed in foster care when they were just 7 and 5 years old, respectively. After time in an orphanage and with a foster family in Las Vegas, they returned to their father in Texas, where they allegedly faced severe physical abuse. Her description of their father's disciplinary methods was particularly disturbing. Beverly went on to describe specific abusive treatment directed at her little brother. She emphasized that they weren't bad kids, just young children in an unstable environment. Beverly continued, explaining that the abuse was for minor infractions. When asked for examples of visible signs of abuse, she replied. She mentioned that at least one teacher had peeped signs of abuse. Beverly's testimony was clearly introduced by the defense to contextualize Tay-K's development and possibly get the jury in their feelings. It suggested that the childhood trauma experienced by Tay-K may have affected his decision-making abilities and understanding of consequences. While not presented as an excuse for criminal behavior, this testimony was meant to offer mitigating factors for consideration during sentencing. The defense also called a forensic and neuropsychologist who testified about Tay-K's underdeveloped frontal lobe at age 16, which affects impulse control. This expert connected Tay-K's traumatic upbringing to potential neurological impacts, explaining how exposure to chronic stress and trauma during childhood can mess with brain development, particularly in areas responsible for decision-making and emotional regulation. The prosecution clapped back at this testimony by emphasizing that many individuals with difficult childhoods don't engage in violent crime, and that Tay-K had demonstrated calculated behavior, such as cutting off his ankle monitor and ducking authorities, that suggested deliberate rather than impulsive actions. As the trial moved into its final stages, the competing narratives of a calculated criminal act versus a troubled young man influenced by traumatic experiences created a complex picture for the jury to evaluate. The prosecution focused on the facts of the Saldivar case, while the defense sought to place Tay-K's actions within a broader context of his life circumstances. The verdict and unexpected courtroom drama. After days of testimony and evidence, the moment of truth finally came on April 14, 2025, when the jury returned with their verdict after careful deliberation. The courtroom was mad tense as Judge Stephanie Boyd prepared to read the decision that would determine Tay-K's fate. In a moment that got captured on video and later went viral across social media, the judge began reading the verdict. The reading of the verdict caused somebody in the courtroom to wild out with emotion, forcing them to get removed before the judge could continue. Once order was restored, Judge Boyd proceeded with reading the complete verdict. This verdict represented a significant legal distinction. Tay-K had dodged a conviction on capital murder, which would have meant an automatic life sentence with no chance of parole. Instead, the jury found him guilty of the lesser charge of murder, which carries a punishment range of 5 to 99 years or life, with the possibility of parole after serving half the sentence or 30 years, whichever is less. During the sentencing phase, both sides presented arguments about the appropriate punishment. The defense emphasized Tay-K's troubled childhood, leveraging the testimony of his sister and the forensic psychologist to argue for consideration of these mitigating factors. They suggested that his exposure to trauma and abuse had messed with his development and decision-making abilities. The prosecution, however, focused on how serious the crime was and Tay-K's apparent lack of remorse. They highlighted that this murder occurred while Tay-K was already on the run for another body, suggesting a pattern of violent behavior that posed an ongoing risk to society. After considering these arguments, the jury delivered their sentencing decision on April 15, 2025. Judge Stephanie Boyd announced the sentence. The judge then polled the jury to confirm their verdict Asking each juror individually, each juror confirmed they were good with the 80-year sentence. Importantly, Judge Boyd announced that this sentence would run concurrently with Tay-K's existing 55-year sentence from his 2019 conviction for the 2016 murder. This meant he would serve both sentences at the same time rather than back-to-back. After the sentencing, a representative for Saldivar's mother read a victim impact statement addressing Tay-K directly. His dreams, ambitions, aspirations, and goals were taken from him by you. The statement underscored the deep loss felt by Saldivar's family, highlighting his potential as a young photographer that would never be realized. Judge Boyd also spoke directly to Tay-K, saying, "I do realize that while this is a lot of time, you're still alive, you can still better yourself. But the complainant in this case is deceased, and you need to internalize that." She acknowledged systemic failures, including weak parenting and child protective services dropping the ball, but emphasized that these factors didn't give him a pass for what he did. It's worth noting that throughout the trial, including during the verdict and sentencing, Tay-K maintained the same composed demeanor he had shown throughout the proceedings. He didn't visibly react to the verdict or sentence, and didn't make any statement of apology or remorse in court. The conviction and sentencing basically killed any realistic chance of Tay-K ever getting back to his once promising music career, which had shown significant potential with the success of The Race and his debut album, Santana World. His debut album had charted on the Billboard 200 at number 128, and reports suggested he had secured the bag for between $600,000 and $700,000 from a record deal with 88 Classic and RCA Records before his legal troubles derailed his trajectory. In a wild twist of irony, the very song that made Tay-K famous, The Race, was used as evidence against him in his first murder trial. Prosecutors argued that the lyrics and video, which showed Tay-K posing with a burner and his own wanted poster, reflected his criminal mindset and lack of remorse. This controversial practice of using artistic expression as evidence in criminal proceedings has been debated by legal scholars and music industry figures alike. The case of Tamor Tay-K McIntyre illustrates the complex mix of factors that can contribute to tragic outcomes. From a promising young artist to a convicted murderer serving an 80-year bid, his trajectory raises questions about the roles of childhood trauma, environmental influences, personal responsibility, and the criminal justice system's capacity to address these intersecting issues. For the legal system, this case demonstrated how various forms of evidence, from eyewitness testimony to surveillance footage to expert psychological analysis, can be weighed and evaluated in determining both guilt and appropriate sentencing. It highlighted the distinction between degrees of murder charges and how juries navigate these legal nuances. For the Saldivar family, the conviction and substantial sentence hopefully provided some measure of closure, though as the victim impact statement powerfully expressed, nothing can truly compensate for the loss of their loved one and the potential he represented. And for Tay-K himself, the consequences of his actions resulted in what amounts to a life largely spent behind bars. Despite the trauma of his own childhood and the systemic failures that may have contributed to his path, the judicial system ultimately held him accountable for his choices and actions. The videos of the trial proceedings, from the girlfriend's explosive testimony to the reading of the verdict and the sister's heartbreaking account of their childhood abuse, continue to circulate online, bringing renewed attention to this tragic case. They serve as stark reminders of the real human cost behind headlines and the complex factors that contribute to such outcomes. Thank you for joining us for this in-depth analysis of the Tay-K murder trial. If you enjoyed this video, click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.